Okay, well, I'm going to be covering a video on Rousseau's Discourse on the Inequalities of Man, and this will be good for anybody that has been reading his work and is a little bit confused as to what they can take away from it. This will be a good summary, and if you have any questions, just let me know. The beginning of the discourse begins with, very broadly, Rousseau noting that there are two main inequalities of man that he has identified, and the first is a natural cause, and the second is a more political cause. So, more natural causes would be an example of somebody, for example, that's born without a limb or is born without a part of their brain or something like that. Whereas more political would be somebody born into a poor family that is on a different socioeconomic scale as somebody else would be. So that's a political inequality. It's important to note the two distinctions because one is something that occurs naturally and the other two is enforced by institutions. So that is the main reason why he brings those two up. And the next part, he goes in to mention that the main way that he thinks is the best way to analyze how this inequality has developed, because of course we didn't have political inequalities during the time of like the Neanderthals when they were hunter-gathering societies roaming around for food. There just weren't these political institutions to enforce inequalities that weren't natural. So Rousseau believes that we must go to the origins of early man and find out how and where this shift began. So in the first discourse, Rousseau notes just man in his early living situation. So he says that man's main concern was self-preservation, keeping himself alive, procreating, feeding himself, and so on. So this is a very simple, very basic way to live, and he's trying to show you how, like, the main differences then what we have now, where we have a lot more concerns than just feeding ourselves and procreating. So he notes that nature has given these abilities, for example, to the ability to hunt and scrounge for food and find out where the main food source is. We're just more physically developed later on because of, man is at least, because he's going out hunting for food and scavenging for that type of stuff. He also goes on to say that in man's natural state, because he's free from these more political and institution-based inequalities, that in nature he's more free. He has freedom to roam the land, he has freedom to hunt for whatever food, and the only case where man exerts a type of callousness is when his life is threatened. So he also notes that as a very large difference. Another very important aspect of Rousseau's philosophy is he says in the first discourse as well that the first yoke that man placed upon himself was when someone said, "This is mine." So essentially he's saying the institution and establishment of property has created this very large inequality, and it has created morality, and through that it created other sort of laws that oppress certain people. So another thing important to know is in the state of nature, man does not have any sense of morality, and he says because of that absence, early man isn't good nor bad, which is kind of breaking of this more traditional notion of early man, because some philosophers believe that early man was inherently wicked because he didn't have any laws or any moral doctrines to go by. Now Rousseau breaks that by saying that's not the case, because these notions didn't exist. And because the sense of morality and a sense of law didn't exist, then it's impossible for these people to have found, to be inherently good or bad, which is another important thing to know. Now, he also says that man possessed pity. So, for example, essentially he means they possessed pity. So, for example, animals, which is another important thing to note, that animals possess certain rights because they are subject of our pity, and essentially the reason for that is because there must be something that keeps us from harming them, and as a result there must be some protection for them. So the most important thing to take away from this is Rousseau believes that the main source of inequality came from the establishment of property. He said one of the main terrible things that came out of that is the want and these desires that are superfluous and unnecessary. So you give somebody the right of a land and you create laws from that, and then you create laws that favor other people. Some people don't have land, and so on and so forth. Another important thing to note about Rousseau is that he broke this very traditional, like, Platonic and Aristotelian belief that certain people are born with certain rights. So, for example, some people are inherently good because they're more noble, which would traditionally mean that they hold positions of power or are fit within the class of the elite. Rousseau said there's no such thing as somebody growing up that's more noble or somebody growing up that's more this or that. So that is another very important thing to know. And now, if anybody has any questions, just let me know. And I know it's been a while since I made a new video, so if you have any other requests, just let me know.